Armando Iannucci's Charm Offensive, presented by Armando Iannucci.
Well, thank you very much, the hands of the studio audience and the mouth of Vaughan Savage. And welcome once again to Charm Offensive, the show which Melvyn Bragg once described as foul. And it's been a week of shifting cultural trends. We could have seen the beginning of the end of reality television this week when falling ratings forced ITV to take celebrity wrestling off primetime telly. Which is a shame because Radio 4 has just spent a fortune recording its own celebrity wrestling on FM, starting later this week with a fight between Eddie Mair and Jenny Murray.
This is PM. I'm Eddie Mair. The diplomatic temperature around Iran.
Yes!
Nuclear weapons.
Good morning.
And on the up this week has been the newspaper craze of Sudoku, the game where there are some numbers in a grid and you have to work out the missing ones. It really is slightly loads of fun. So much so that Charm Offensive is going to be the first programme to launch Sudoku on the radio. So, everyone at home, pens at the ready. In the studio, we've got 8 people standing in an 81-box grid. Here are their numbers.
4, 7, 5.
Okay, you should have been able to work out where each person was shouting in relation to each other, if you have digital. And we'll be playing all numbers shouted by 81 people at the end of the show. Okay, joining me this week on Charm Offensive are Marcus Brigstock, Mark Steele and John Oliver.
Hello.
And to start with, let's examine the bearded American multimillionaire who's clearly out to spoil everyone in this country's fun. George Lucas. He's just brought out a new Star Wars film, Revenge of the Sith, which once again uses state-of-the-art visual effects to make it look as if millions of people actually care. So to begin with, team, I wonder, have you cared enough to have bought any of the merchandise? Mark?
No, it passed me by first time round,
passed
really, and
you
I've
by?
just done what one we're up to now. And it's gone backwards as well, isn't it? Is it like Star Wars -6 or something now, isn't it?
Yes, it's 4, 5, 6, 1, 2... It's a very expensive Sudoku, really.
There are actually 9 in the original trilogy, though.
John?
He's getting more and more innovative, though, in merchandise and how he can make more money. You can now buy a Star Wars airbag for your car that, on impact, you get smashed in the face by an inflatable Ewok. That's got to be money well spent.
The whole thing, really, is based on a trade war. That's the thing that's amazed me, this enormously action-packed sci-fi sequence.
Yeah.
Is all about an intergalactic tax system that's got out of it.
Imposed by some ever so slightly Japanese-looking folks. Just slightly, you think, oh, hang on, that's a bit off, until you see the hovering Jewish person, and then you think...
Although George Lucas has said that the Revenge of the Sith, actually everything starts to make sense. All the racism will make sense.
Right. There's lots of them have tie-ins with, with food products and stuff. I opened a box of Rice Krispies the other day, and it actually had the Kessel Run in it. And I did it. It took me 24 parsecs because, they've put speed bumps on it since Han Solo did it. Just about 10 nerds got that, and everyone else... What? He lost me at Rice Krispies.
I found myself there just turning into High Court judge thinking, what is a Kessel Run? Apparently George Lucas filmed this latest film using the rules of Dogma. It's all natural lighting, no music, and they're all done in real time. So if they do go on a journey of 59 million light years, it actually does take 59 million light years, which is why it seems like that.
A light year's a measure of distance, though. I've not quite got the hang of this show, have I?
And there is the other aspect of Star Wars films, I find, which is that George Lucas has his characters speak a very peculiar form of English, in which the word order gets slightly out of kilter, or kilter out of which the word order gets. It's called Manglanglish. And you can translate any phrase into it. For example, Charm Offensive becomes the Sieve of Charm. We could do it with panellist names. Marcus, you're the stock of Mark Brigg.
I quite like that.
Mark Steele is the eel of Markster. And Von Savage, you're the vag of the Vonsa. Well, those of you who can't be bothered waiting to see the latest Star Wars film, The Revenge of the Sith, or to give it its correctly manglangled title, The Et-Piss of Buck, will be pleased to hear we've set up a live feed to a screening so we can have a bootleg of the sound of the film. You can hear a few people in the audience, but the quality's not bad.
Remember back to your early teachings.
Is that monster meant to be Jamaican?
Afraid to lose it.
My tub hasn't got a spoon.
Use their power for good.
This is the biggest letdown since the Treaty of Versailles.
We only had salted popcorn. Is that all right?
Who invented mixing salt and sweet popcorn? What deaf-in-the-mouth weirdo came up with that?
Oh, good, there's a debate about trade barriers coming up. You got sat-nav.
Are we still in the cinema, or was that a social question?
Thank you very much. We shall move on. This week, Pope Benedict XVI exerted his reactionary authority in an act tabloid newspapers didn't call The Revenge of the Sith-teenth. He announced he was speeding up the process to make his predecessor John Paul II a saint. All he needs is proof of just 2 miracles carried out in John Paul's name, and if he can get them in the space of a month, John Paul will have smashed the all-time canonization speed record previously held by Saint Miguerta, the patron saint of speed records. So the challenge is on, and this is where you, the listeners, come in. We want you to text or email us any miracles you may have spotted, or better still, photograph them on your mobile and send them to us. We'll pass them on to the Vatican. Somehow. Probably by praying them there. So, I don't know if... we've already had some miracles sent in. There's a chap in Hendon who says that he dropped a bunch of keys onto the floor and they landed in the shape of Cliff Richard's face. Any other miracles?
Yeah, there's a girl in Bedford who claims to be able to turn water into squash. I've got no reason to doubt her.
What do these people that believe in these miracles that you get in the Sunday papers must think that God's up there thinking, right, there's still some people who don't believe in me. Right, I'll prove it once and for all. I'll write my name on the inside of an aubergine in Paris. Then there'll be no doubt about it.
Did you see that someone's texted us to say they saw Wayne Rooney's face on a potato? Although I can't help feeling they just saw a potato.
That's definitely in the area of miracle or coincidence, isn't it?
Well, I've got a text from a lady in Toddington who said that Jesus appeared to her in a film.
If you looked at him, you could see the face of Robert Powell on his face.
Yeah. There's very little justice in the Bible, the more you think about it. If you think about it, Moses, now, there's someone who's got to be on anyone's top 5 list of their favourite Jews. But technically...
What sort of a list is this that people...
Let's not pretend we haven't all got one scrawled somewhere.
Special theme night this Saturday on Channel 4, 100 Top Jews.
Yeah.
Hosted by Jimmy Carr. But Mel Brooks at 83.
Mel Brooks is in my top 5.
Judas at number 3. There'll be an outrage. Fiddle the vote.
But when you think...
Stephen Fry? Oh, I didn't realise.
That's right. Some of them are very surprising.
Sorry.
But when you really think about...
Sorry, John, we rained on your Jewish parade.
That's right.
I've had a text, just with the miracles, I've had a text from a man in Kent who claims he prayed for a nameless, soggy pianist last week. So that's one.
Just before we move on then, is there anyone who people would like to make a saint?
I'd like to make Jamie Oliver a saint. He's going to save us all. And he's taught me a very important thing as well, and that is that an unhealthy lifestyle is like a homing pigeon. Sure, it's a lot of fun at the time, but one day it will track you down and it will kill you.
I'd like Greavesy to be made a saint. Just to be lovely and confusing.
Just as a miracle come in here, someone said Christopher Eccleston got through an episode of Doctor Who without gurning. OK, time to catch up on where everyone is with their Sudoku grids. John and Mark each have 2 contrasting pairs of completed lines in a staggered form, but Marcus has completed 4 grids and in the process of eliminating possible sequences for a 7th column. Just to let you know, next week we'll be playing Subaka, where the rules are you get to flirt with Ali McCoist. Now then, young people. Young people. Blue Water Shopping Centre is currently the centre of a storm after banning from its premises young people with hoods, toddlers fitted with bull bars, and all tannoy music recorded after 1993. And the whole youth debate culminated in this charming clash on the Today programme earlier this week, where a reporter was sent out to speak to some hoodies.
Can I just ask you, do you feel as if you're threatening to people?
That's how we are, man. That's how we grow up, man. Come on, man. Life.
So how do you feel when you hear that... Sorry?
It's ghetto, mate.
Oh, I've just seen a group of yous who've got their hoods up walking through the streets together.
That's because they think they're Tupac. They want to be thugs, right? That's their fault, innit? They want to act bad, then that's them, innit? They look suspicious. And I did have a baseball cap on then, but it was like one of them ones that protect my ears as well.
I mean, what do you think of that? You've heard that a shopping centre's banned people from wearing baseball caps and hoods like you've got on.
I do think that is a bit stupid, but then they do look suspicious still, innit? Yeah.
So, but you're wearing a baseball cap and a hood?
I know, yeah, it does. It does make you look... It gives a bad impression, innit?
But you're wearing them?
Yeah, I know.
I suddenly thought I was in an Ealing comedy there. Hello, sir, what do you do? It just felt so...
That is a dangerous clash of 2 worlds, Radio 4 and youth culture.
I think if that happens, the universe implodes.
He must have gone back. 2-pack. Looks it up in the dictionary. It isn't where... Yeah, because you do. I find myself a little bit thinking, well, look, when I was that age, I used to shoplift, but at least I did it clearly.
Did I hear one of them say that he wears a hood to protect himself from the rain, and he's got a cap that protects his ears? Yeah. That surely is a deer stalker.
Yeah. His mates call him Sherlock Holmes. What people forget about the Blue Water thing, about the ban on hoodies, is it's very, very hard on beekeepers.
Yeah. Or the lady from the Scottish Widows advert.
Yeah.
What they've done is they've said to the nation's youth that violence is caused by rap, because rap's about violence. And you think, if violence is caused by music about violence, what impact must Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture have had then? 19th century Europe must have been awash with drive-by cannonings, mustn't it?
I once saw some young people in a shopping centre with a sawn-off cannon. Very frightening.
There's some
Prussians. Yeah. Prussian youth.
How do you respond to the idea of putting young people in these orange-coloured uniforms they're talking about while they do community service?
What, and putting them in camps?
Yes. New Labour camps. Yes. It's part of Blair Youth. I think the only way to resolve this whole issue is to engage with young people. This is a listening programme. This discussion can only be settled if at this point in the programme we found out exactly what young people want. And the best way to do this is to ask the youngest person in the audience what he or she wants. So let's just quickly find that person out. Could you stick your hand up if you are the youngest person in the audience? Oh, it's a simple question. OK, well, I'll tell you what, I'll have to choose. Hang on. Got my microphone here. I'm going to try and find what looks to me like the Radio 4 equivalent of the youngest person in the audience. You'll do.
Hello.
Come on. Sit there.
Hello, young man.
Hello.
I'll just establish, first of all, now, you are a young people, aren't you?
Would you like me to translate? I speak youth.
OK.
He wants to know if you're young and ting, man.
Yeah.
He says yes.
What is your name?
He wants to know what you go by, like, have you got a tag or something, or you just like...
Jonathan.
Is that short for anything?
J-Row.
Wicked. And what do you do, Jonathan?
I work lobbying on climate change.
And when you do that, do you wear a hood?
In the rain.
Jonathan, which one of us is the minger? Did you have any other questions for our youth people here?
Jonathan, how's it hanging?
Okay.
Oh, God, I can't understand a word he says.
He's dissing you, man.
Speaking as a youth, if anyone asks you to big up yourself, should you be offended by that, or just sort of go away and do it quietly?
Do it quietly.
Yeah.
Are you currently daisy chaining?
Not currently.
Okay, right, the big question, the final question here. Jonathan, as spokesperson for young people, what it is that you, the young people, really want?
Lots more interesting sounds we can use as ringtones.
Well, that's a fantastic coincidence, because we happen to have Von Savage standing by with this week's downloaded ringtone noises charts. Here's the top 10 noises young people have downloaded this week onto their mobiles.
At number 10, it's a yodeling Sith. At 9, the sound of battered fish entering a fat fryer. Up 3 places at 8, a talking, swearing snake. In at 7, a pig in shoes falling down a fire escape. No change at number 6, it's a mosquito coming nearer and nearer. At 5, the sound of a crazy dimbleby. Last week's number 9 moves up to 4, it's Rebecca Lou's on fire. New at number 3, your own voice saying, "I do believe that's for me," in a funny accent. Straight in at number 2, a lonely budgerigar pecking at a bell. And still at number 1 for a 4th week, a lorry reversing over Peter Kay.
Now, no change on the Sudoku, but just announced next week we'll be playing Subaru, where you get to knock down a grid of lollipop ladies on a 4x4. I was just thinking that this obsession with Sudoku and research that came out last week saying that actually our obsession with video games and computer games actually is making us cleverer. It's sharpening up our instincts and it's raising our IQ. It's made me wonder, as a society, are we getting cleverer or more stupid? But on the downside, there is this craze for happy slapping, which is just taking photographs on your phone of hitting people, jackass-type stupidity, and that Oxford students do jump off a bridge into 2 inches of water despite being told not to. So just where do we stand in this are we clever or are we thick dichotomy?
I saw an episode of The Weakest Link in which someone was asked what man-made object built in the 3rd century BC is said to be the only man-made object visible from space. And the bloke answered, the Millennium Dome.
I was on Blind Date. They teamed up a student with a girl who clearly wasn't a student. They had a day out in London, and they came back next week and they interviewed them, and she said it was really boring because he wanted to take me around lots of museums. And the questioner said, well, what museums? And she said, the Trocadero. Rock Circus and Madame Tussauds.
In the olden days, when a train passed through a tunnel, ladies used to hold a pin between their teeth to stop a man stealing a kiss in the darkness of the tunnel. And I've actually been doing something similar to stop this happy slapping craze by driving a nail through my cheek. And let me tell you, if someone happy slaps you and gets a nail through their hand, it's them that looks foolish, not you.
The incredible thing, though, is not in so much the happy slapping craze, but it's in the reaction to it. The first time I heard about it was on the local news, where there's this guy said it started off as a South London craze, happy slapping, and then looked deeply into the camera and said, it has now spread to Kent.
I was brought up in Kent, and I can tell you, happy slapping would be a move towards intellectualising the place.
Now, most of you will have realised by now that Mark, John, Marcus and myself are all right-wing. Which means we're eminently qualified to take part in the next part of the programme, which is called Tip Top. It's Top Tory Think Tank time. With no women. This is the part of the show where we have to be members of a Conservative Party think tank devising ways in which the party can broaden its appeal so that in 4 years' time it can nearly be in power. So, gentlemen, any solutions?
I'd advise the Conservative Party, I think, not to focus quite so much on immigration, because the policy they had in the election of the 24-hour security at a tiny minority of British ports, I've estimated if they wanted full round-the-clock security, that would take about 2.3 million new security guards, which we would have to recruit from overseas and pay illegally low amounts to. And in that sense, it is possibly the first ever Conservative ironic immigration policy.
There was a brilliant one on about the 2 days before the election. Oh, we're supposed to be a think tank, aren't we? Yes.
That's all right.
One of our chaps was on was on the radio just a couple of days before the election, and it was just when when you're just sort of waking up and you only half hear something. I didn't even hear what the question was, but I just heard his answer, and his answer was, "Can I say once again how outrageous it is that I am supposed to come on here at 7:20 in the morning, and you've had Ruth Kelly on at 8:10 in the prime slot 3 times in a row." And the first thing I thought was top marks for being that angry that early in the morning. Because most of us have to, even I have to wake up and then work up to a ranting rage even Ian Paisley probably has to have a cup of tea and appreciate the garden and do a few guttural before.
What does Ian Paisley's car sound like when it starts up in the morning?
I don't know, sir.
There was this strange debate the Tories had earlier in the week about whether they should wear a tie or not in interviews. Because if you don't wear a tie, that shows you're a progressive.
Yeah,
if you do wear a tie,
secret code.
Yes,
it's quite a lot like cottaging.
Yes,
really.
House of Commoning, I think it's called.
Exactly. Whatever you have hanging out of your back pocket, that defines which area of the party you're in.
Right.
If Ken Clark's hanging out the back of your trousers, people know you're a bit old-fashioned.
On now to your complaints. Now, the new BBC Charter makes a public commitment to respond to any complaints from its viewers and listeners. Our responsibility charm offensive doesn't take lightly in a section of the show called Your Right to an Out-of-Office Reply. And first off, we've received a sackload of emails from Doctor Who fans complaining about remarks I made last week about Christopher Eccleston's constant gurning. Thousands have written to Eccleston's defence. Typical of them is the following email, which says, "Dear Armando, I was appalled to hear Christopher Eccleston's facial performance described as gurning. It is not gurning, but actually an amazingly accurate rendition of a little-known Time Lord behavioural characteristic known as Gallifreyan face-morphic disconduct. If you're going to make derogatory remarks about actors' facial characteristics, then please confine your comments to Billie Piper's lips, which are so big her face looks like a jackknifed hovercraft." Yours truly, Jeff O'Dowding's president of the Christopher Eccleston's Gurning Appreciation Society. And finally, we have a complaint from a Mr. R. Kilroy Silk, who says he was upset by a reference in last week's show to him coming fourth in his constituency during the general election. He claims I said that he lost to an MP, and he claims that I said, ironically, the MP was called Elizabeth Blackman, and that I went on to say, God, how that must have hurt. Now, Kilroy Silk says this is offensive because it tars him with a racist brush, the sort of brush that could only have been wielded by a Scottish Italian. Well, I'm afraid you misheard the recording, Mr. Silk, because if I play the clip again, you'll hear that I actually said the complete opposite. Let's hear that. OK, well, I just want to move on to my other favourite moment from the election, which was Robert Kilroy Silk's result. The person he lost to was an MP called Elizabeth Blackman. God, that must have not hurt. So there you go, vindication, Mr. R. Kilroy Silk. Or should I say Mr. Arithmetically Low Sense of Humour, Killjoy Sulk. OK, the final part of the show is called For God's Sake, Calm Down, It's Only Manchester United. Dan, we really ought to get some perspective when tackling this story. I mean, I saw two headlines on the same day. One said Glazer gets United, and the other said North Korea boosts Arsenal. And, I know which one I find more worrying, but apparently not. The sale of Manchester United to American businessman Darth Glazer has so enraged loyal Man U fans that they've had to build an extra runway to let them all fly up there to complain. So finally, team, where does the Manchester United takeover leave football, sport and life itself?
Well, as you say, you know, these Manchester United fans saying, oh, but our little club has been taken over by this big corporate monster. It seems to me it's like if Kentucky Fried Chicken were bought out by McDonald's and then said, oh, and our poor nice little family restaurant's been taken over.
Yeah, there is this fear that with the takeover, he'll turn Manchester United into some sort of commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to change the name? Because he changed the name of the Tampa Bay...
Buccaneers.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
Glazers lasers.
The Old Trafford overdrafts.
Malcolm's Mancunian Marauders.
He's got everything. He's also got 75% at the moment of the British public's capacity to hate. We need that 25% left over for asylum seekers, but I tell you, if he keeps pushing us, he's going to get it.
They've taken on a lot of debt, haven't they? Or he has incurred a lot of debt.
Yeah.
And there is a fear that actually, in order to repay this debt, Manchester United will have to sell off all their good players.
Or consolidate them into one massive player. One huge, whining, fally downy, not get up until everyone's seen me and then just slap a bladder about fop overpaid ponce.
OK, just finally time for us to wrap up the Sudoku puzzle. You remember the numbers we started off with?
4, 7, 5.
Well, by now you should have filled in all the squares in the grid, and your answer should sound like this. And the first person to shout that answer in an email wins tonight's Star Prize, which is a DVD of Revenge of the Sith with a bonus 40 minutes taken out. Good night.
That was Armando Iannucci's Charm Offensive, presented by Armando Iannucci. The guests this week were Marcus Brigstock, Mark Steele and John Oliver. It was written by Armando Iannucci and John Holmes, Danny Robbins, Ian Martin and Dan Tetzel, and the producer was David Tyler. The programme was a Positive production for the BBC.